bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya.
In different types of bodies, which arise from a combination of material nature, time, desires, and occupational duties. Thus different types of consciousness develop, just as fire, which is always basically the same, blazes in different ways according to the shape and dimension of firewood. The significant point here is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is all-pervading. That includes the fact that He is present in the bodies of all living entities also. The Brahma Samhita says, Kaloka eva nivasati akilatma bhuta. That thou, the Personality of Godhead, is situated in the spiritual abode of Goloka Vrindavan. Nevertheless, His presence is felt everywhere, and He is present everywhere. In purport, Prabhupada states, the Supreme Personality of Godhead constantly lives with the individual soul as Paramatma. So the point is that the Lord expands, and in the capacity as Paramatma, He is present in every living entity's heart. And in that position, His main concern is to direct the living entity according to his desires. And should the living entity desire to develop spiritual consciousness, to also direct him on the right path. The Paramatma is also called the silent observer. Prabhupada used to relate the story that when he was in college, in Scottish College in Calcutta, the British professor once asked him, you Hindus believe in reincarnation, but who is actually witnessing all the deeds, sinful deeds or good deeds that one may perform? And Prabhupada replied that at that time he was unable to reply, but the real reply is that the Paramatma is witnessing everything that one does. So, besides the Paramatma, there are also many other witnesses to the different activities that a living entity performs, and this is confirmed by this Brahman Jadabharat's explanation to Maharaj Rahugana. This is explained in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam. Jadabharata was a Brahmin boy who in his previous life was a deer, and prior to that the Maharaj Bharat, on whose name this whole planet was named. Today, of course, by Bharat one understands the country of India, but thousands of years ago, this whole planet was called Bharatvarsha after the name of Maharaj Bharat. So, Jadabharat explains to Maharaj Rahugana that they are innumerable witnesses to the activities that a living entity performs. The living entity may perform an activity even behind closed doors, but still they are innumerable witnesses. The star is the witness, the moon is the witness, the sun is the witness, the air is the witness. Any sinful activity that one performs either has to be in the daytime or in the night time. So either the sun is a witness, or the moon is a witness, or the stars, and you can't go anywhere without air. So, and besides this, the different demigods are also witnesses, and above all, the Paramatma is a witness. So, when the living entity performs sinful activities, it is not that nobody is watching it. There are many witnesses, in fact. So based upon the consciousness of the living entity at the moment of death, and based upon the different activities that the living entity engages in during one's life, he obtains a body of that type. And the Paramatma is such a dear friend of the Atma that he never leaves the Atma alone. Sometimes in the material world we see, generally, not sometimes, that when a friend is in difficulty, the other friend just leaves him alone. But the Paramatma is such a dear friend of the individual soul that even if the individual obtains a lower piece of body, such as a dog or a cat or any animal, still the Paramatma stays with the individual. He doesn't leave him. He doesn't say, oh, now you had a human body before, now you're in the body of a dog, so I'm not going to stay with you. No. The Paramatma is the best friend of the living entity. Therefore, he accompanies the living entity all the time. So, if in the human form of life, one utilizes his life correctly, then the Paramatma makes sure that the next life is definitely in a higher form. Maybe in the higher planet, or maybe a return to the original home, that's the kingdom of God, based upon the activities. So, the Paramatma is just observing everything, based upon the desires guiding the living entity. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hirdesha rajnate sati. He is in everyone's heart. And if the living entity develops a genuine desire to come on the right spiritual path, the Paramatma will make sure that he brings him to that path. And should the living entity desire to forget the Lord and His instructions, then the Paramatma will also make sure that the living entity is able to forget. So the advice of the Vedic scriptures is that the human form of life especially should be utilized to cultivate God consciousness. And this is also stated in this purport, that a human being is therefore advised to associate with spiritually advanced personalities. So the point is, the human life should be utilized to cultivate spiritual principles. But unfortunately we see that the present day society has very little respect for what the scriptures are saying. They have faith in everything else that is printed that they read or they get. But they have very little faith in what these scriptures, especially the Vedic scriptures, are saying. Without faith, one cannot realize anything in life. For example, an employee works very hard in the factory, and at the end of the week, he just gets a piece of paper, and on the piece of paper it is written, "Pay this man, Mr. George, so many dollars." And the man has faith that when he takes that paycheck to a bank, and he gives that paycheck in the bank's going to give him some dollars in exchange. And with that dollars, he will be able to maintain himself plus engage in nonsense activities. In other words, he has faith that that paper is his guide to mature prosperity. When you get on the plane, you just buy a ticket and say, from Montreal, I want to go to New York, and you just get on the plane and sit down. You don't go to the pilot every few minutes to make sure that if he's really headed for New York or not. The point is, we have faith. So just like we have faith that a piece of paper will get us dollars when we go to the bank, or when you buy a ticket and get on the plane, you're going to reach a destination. Similarly, we also have to have faith that what is written in these pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita, they will guide us to spiritual prosperity. So the point is that this beautiful human form of life should be utilized for a beautiful ending. Prabhupada used to say this. He said something beautiful should not be utilized for an ugly ending. Everything is tested at the moment of death. Just like, for example, a student may say he's studying very hard, but how much he has studied is actually tested at the time of the examination. If he passes the examination with good marks, then the parents think, yes, he was really studying. Similarly, all the activities that we engage in, the result will be tested at the moment of death. So the point is, presently we see that we are in a very beautiful situation, a beautiful body, beautiful environment, beautiful facilities. Now this beautiful situation should somehow or the other be utilized for a happy ending. So the ending should be happy. That is the point. If the end is not happy, then the whole human life has been a failure. Just like in India, they produce these Hindi movies. Some of you may know that India is the largest producer of movies in the world. But they have one common rule. The ending of the movie is always happy. Doesn't matter how much sorrow, crying there may be in the movie, but the ending is a happy ending. Because the understanding is that when you walk out of the movie hall, you should walk out in a happy mood. So similarly, this human life, the ending should be happy. And that is only conceivable and possible if the human life has been used for a spiritual purpose, if the human form has been used correctly. So, instead of engaging in spiritual activities, we see that the people have just become completely mad. Prabhupada used to say that everyone is mad. This is a society of mad people. Punāt-punāt-charvita-chavanānām. They are trying to squeeze happiness from a sugar cane which cannot give any juice. They are trying to squeeze happiness from objects which do not have any juice in themselves. It may appear that there is juice, just like in the desert. It may appear that there is a mirage, and the dog in the desert is thirsty. He just goes on running from one object to another to find that water in the desert. But he doesn't find that water, and in the end the animal dies in the desert. So similarly, the living entity is hoping that there is going to be some juice, there is going to be some happiness in these different material activities, and therefore he pursues different activities one after another. But the end result is comparable to that of the dog in the desert. The living entity just dies completely frustrated. The materialist who is blind to the purpose of human life, andhā yathānalo, such an individual tries everything for sense gratification. For example, if we analyze these situations, the standards of morality in society today, we will see that they're trying everything for happiness, for trying to squeeze some happiness. For example, for a long time, the normal understanding was that a man would associate with a woman and so on, and the woman with the man. But now they've got tired of that. So now the most common thing in society, in the Western society, is becoming gay, as they call it. That's a new process they're trying to get some happiness. And they've tried all sorts of drugs. Now we've heard that they're trying to inject everything into the body. And some of the human beings, they're having dance parties with different animals also. In Seattle, there was a party where the human beings were dancing with the hogs and embracing the hogs. So that is the standard. We are trying to find happiness by all means. We are embracing hogs. We are trying to associate with people of the same sex and try to think that this will give us happiness. We are trying to shoot anything into our body, but still there is no happiness. So the point is that the living entity who doesn't have faith in the scriptures, he just becomes a madman. Nam pramatā kurute vikarma idendriya priyataya apranoti. Such an individual is a madman. And a madman will always perform very funny, any activity. A madman can never be trusted upon. He may do anything at any moment. So the society is composed of mad people. And the devotees of the Lord are those who are considered to be saintly or in knowledge about the purpose of human life. So just having knowledge is one aspect. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised that those who are in knowledge have to act in that knowledge. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Vidya Babu Jivanam. That is, that one who has his Vidya, knowledge, he must live by that knowledge. Just like Prabhupada used to say, one must be an āśaya, he must be an ideal example. So just having knowledge is incomplete if you don't live by it. Just like if someone becomes an engineer or a lawyer, he goes to school for such a long time, and then if he doesn't practice that knowledge, then of course he will lose that knowledge and he will cease to be an engineer. So the point is, the devotees of the Lord have the vidya, they have the knowledge about the goal of human life, about the position of the Lord, and hence they want to live by that knowledge. So the point is that the transcendentalist is defined as one who lives by that knowledge. Knowledge that is not put into practice, just rust the individual. Just like an iron rod. If it is not polished for some time, if it just lies in one place, after some time it becomes rusty. So the point is that the devotees, they have this vidya and they want to lead their life according to this vidya. Whereas the materialist, he is always contemplating the objects of sense gratification. And when one contemplates the object of sense gratification, attachment develops. And when attachment develops, then lust develops. And when he's unable to fulfill that object of sense gratification, then anger develops. Materialist, he is always contemplating the objects of the senses. He is always contemplating, how can I serve my different senses better? He is always shooting for, how can he attain a higher standard of sense gratification? That is his principal contemplation. Whereas the devotee is also contemplating, but he is contemplating something different. The devotee is contemplating, how can I become a better devotee? How can I serve the Lord a little better? How can I understand the Lord's instructions better? And the devotee is also contemplating, how can I serve the spiritual master and the Lord better? And because he is contemplating like that, then he also develops an attachment that he should engage in only those activities which will help him realize the contemplation. So the difference is only in the areas of contemplation. The materialist is contemplating, how can I increase the pleasure of my senses, and the end result is anger and frustration. Whereas the transcendentalist is always contemplating, how can I serve the Lord better? How can I understand the instructions of the Lord a little better? So when the devotee is just contemplating how his devotional service can be enhanced, how can I become a better devotee, then the Lord who is situated at the Paramatma reciprocates. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Ananyas chintayanto mam he jana paripasate. Those who worship me with devotion and love, I make up what they lack and I preserve what they have. Because of his Yogashayam, that is, he is very merciful to those who are surrendered unto him. So our contemplation or the contemplation of the transcendentalist is always, how can one become a better devotee of the Lord? And because the devotee has knowledge or jnana, he is not attracted to objects of sense gratification, though the opportunity may present itself. Just like Sanatana Goswami. Sanatana Goswami was chanting in Vrindavan, and he had a touchstone with him, which could convert anything into gold. But Sanatana Goswami was not attracted by that touchstone. To him that touchstone was not very important. Therefore he had it stacked away under some garbage. To him most important jewel was the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. So similarly a transcendentalist, he is not attracted to areas of sense gratification or any object that may give him some sense pleasure. To him, this is simply dirt. It's like, for example, if you pass through a very dirty place, a very dirty house, you never want to go back to that house or that dirty place again, isn't it? Like in some parts there are serious slums, ghettos, where it's very bad, dirty. You don't want to go back to that place again. Similarly, the devotee realizes that sense gratification is dirt. It is filthy. Just like we say, oh, that place is filthy, I don't want to go back there. So a devotee realizes that sense gratification is filthy. Therefore, even when the opportunity is there, he knows that that is filth, and he doesn't get attracted. Nobody gets attracted by filth. Nobody gets attracted by stool, for example. So when the devotee sees the opportunity for sense gratification, that is just like stool to him. That because he is jnana, he is not attracted by it. Whereas the materialist, he is attracted to it, just like an hog is attracted to stool. The point is that the devotee is always contemplating, how can I serve the Lord better? And the materialist is always contemplating, how can I please my senses better? So because of this contemplation, then the materialist develops attachment to sense objects, whereas the devotee develops attachment to the lotus feet of the Lord. And the devotee, because of his jnana, he wants to act by that knowledge also. And acting by that knowledge means complete conviction that sense gratification is just like stool. Just like nobody enjoys sitting next to a stool. Just like when one goes to a toilet, one wants to rush out. Similarly, to a devotee, sense gratification is just like stool. Whereas the materialist, because he has a lower standard of happiness, because he has a lower standard of enjoyment comparable to that of the hogs, he is attracted to garbage-like things. Because the devotee is contemplating on the Lord and His instructions, the devotee is called priya. Priya means one who is very dear to everyone. Priya means one who has no enemy. So the devotee literally has no enemies. Why? Because the devotee is only interested in giving. He is only interested in giving people information about God. He is only interested in giving people information about their constitutional position. He is not interested in taking anything for himself. To him, personal pleasures or possessions don't mean anything. They're not worth any value. The only thing that a devotee wants to do is give people information about the Lord so that the living entity can get up from his miserable position and some of the other perfect his life. Just like the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam states, Tasmat Sankirtan Vishnu Jagat Mangla Mahasam. That is, the whole world can become happy by taking to the Sankirtan process. And in the purport also Prabhupada states, therefore the Sankirtan movement contributed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Lord Chaitanya is the direct and easiest process for coming to the purest form of consciousness. So the devotee, because he is priya, dear to everyone, he just wants to make the whole world happy by getting people to take part in the Sankirtan process. The Sankirtan process is the process for making the unhappy happy. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells a devotee that, Gopinathacharya, that a devotee's desires are so powerful that he can convert a stone-like man's heart into as soft as a rose. And Vrindavan Das Thakur says that a devotee of the Lord is so powerful that each devotee can liberate a whole universe. So the point is that if we contemplate on the instructions of the Lord, if we contemplate on the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya, if we contemplate on just giving people something, we don't want anything in return for ourselves. If we do request some donations, it is just for the Lord. It is just for the propagation of the Lord's mission. If we want nothing for ourselves, if we just contemplate all the time these thoughts, then the Lord who is situated as a Paramatma will give us the intelligence by which we will be able to convert the coal-like heart of the man into a clean, white heart. So just like the materialist has faith that the paycheck he's getting is his guide to prosperity, material prosperity, so the devotee must have complete faith all the time that these instructions of the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita, these are the guide to spiritual prosperity. And we should have complete faith and conviction and execute this Sankirtan process, always contemplating how can I increase my service to the Lord. Hare Krishna. Any questions? No. Yeah. Complicated question. But anyway, it's a very intelligent question, really. Because this is a problem that everyone in this room is facing. We all have material desires. So when we have material desires, there's no need to analyze where it is coming from. We can just understand that if it is not linked up to Krishna, then the desire is material. You follow? Anything that is not linked up to Krishna is material. So you just remove it completely. Just like when you're beginning to get boil, when you get a boil in your hand, you want to remove that boil right away so that if it gets big, then it's going to become more infectious. You follow? So the moment these material desires come, you should just remove them completely from the beginning. Therefore I talked about contemplation of the instructions of the Lord. The nature of the mind is to contemplate. So the materialists are contemplating the objects of sense enjoyment. But the devotee is contemplating the instructions of the Lord. And because he's always thinking of the instructions of the Lord and the spiritual master, he develops attachment to it. What's in some desires what? Yeah. Well, the Lord as the Paramatma sees what is our predominating desire. You follow? Which desire is stronger? And if the stronger desire is spiritual, then the Lord brings you on the spiritual path. But then, with knowledge, we should be able to control the temptation of the senses. One cannot think that he can fulfill spiritual life, spiritual desires and material desires at the same time. Hare Krishna.